In this weather video by One Nation Weather, I'm going to be breaking down my prediction for Idalia as it is expected to become a major hurricane from some models. Those talks are coming about, so I'll be breaking that down and the potential for that to occur. I'll have the latest intensity projections about Florida's big hit and also give you track scenarios. So go ahead and like and subscribe, and let's get right into this in a timely and efficient manner. Here we go, Sunday 5 p.m. Eastern Time cone. You can see it is now expected to become a Category 2 hurricane right before landfall there in the Big Bend region. That is why from places like Panama City, curling all the way back down to the Tampa-St. Pete area of the coastline for us there, we have a hurricane watch in effect. But we even have tropical storm watches as far down as the far western Keys for us, so keep that in mind. That pretty much the entire west coast of Florida, as well as the Panhandle coast, needs to be ready for this, as well as the chance of storm surge. I'll be breaking down the storm surge a little bit later in more detail. Now, in terms of your Monday afternoon location and intensity, you can see still sitting right between the Yucatan Peninsula of Mexico and that Yucatan Channel, just west of portions of places like, say, Havana, Cuba, so keep this in mind. Very heavy rain coming through in all of these areas and devastating flooding expected. Nearby storms will indirectly influence rain on Florida for Monday, so even as you're going throughout your day on Monday, you might notice dark skies, showers and storms developing. We've got Hurricane Franklin off to the east, expected to become a major hurricane there. We could have another major hurricane trying to get itself together on the west coast of Florida. All of this combined will bring at least the early onset of some pop-up showers and storms getting going in an even more widespread fashion than normal for Florida, as a strong tropical storm or Category 1 hurricane is likely to begin forming here for sure as we go towards Tuesday morning. Could see this be as intense as a Category 2 according to some models by this time. Outer bands will likely begin to hit Florida throughout Tuesday. These bands will be quite feisty and will bring the chance for heavy rain, breezy skies, as well as the chance for tornadoes, and yes, some storm surge could begin to hit places like the Keys, as well as all the way on up to Tampa, St. Pete, as early as Tuesday morning. So yes, this is coming on quick. We only have about 24 to 36 hours before these impacts are imminent for many areas for you here on the southwestern coast of Florida there. Recent trends have the eastern side of the storm grazing up the majority of Florida's west coast. As you can see, the area of vorticity is going to be the strongest a few hundred miles offshore, but nonetheless, that inundation coming into the Tampa Bay could be devastating and deadly, which is why we need to be ready for this ahead of time. Tuesday and Tuesday evening provide winds to 60 miles per hour in the Tampa area, but again, by this point, storm surge will already begin increasing to 4 feet at least, but we could see some of the peak surge values all the way back down towards places like Naples get all the way on up to 4 to 6 feet. Again, the southeast and eastern as well as northeastern quadrants, those are the most prominent areas for dangerous rain, wind, and then the surge, of course, as well. Landfall will be imminent Tuesday night for the Big Bend region of Florida, so you can see the GFS model for you there on the right side of your screen. We've got the European model on the left side. They're in pretty good agreement as to the overall intensity. Probably a Cat 1 to Cat 2 storm making a landfall according to these models. As you can see, the GFS would bring this landfall just a little bit further west, so it would be hitting more of the southern coast for you there in the Panhandle, as opposed to the far northern end of the west coast of Florida for us, right in that Big Bend area that the European model is showing. Regardless, though, these impacts would be only about 100 to 200 miles off at best, so keep this in mind that these impacts are starting to get a lot more certain in terms of the clarity. A powerful storm capable of 75 plus mile per hour wind in a sustained fashion will strike. We're talking about these wind gusts and sustained winds pushing all the way onshore. Even places like Jacksonville could get very strong wind and rain out of this. Some models show a Category 3 hurricane making a landfall here. That is the worst case scenario, Cat 3 to 4. But nonetheless, be ready for that worst case scenario, even though it is one of the more unlikely situations. As you can see, 943 millibars minimum pressure. That is strong caliber storm for you there, that one of the hurricane models is indicating on this. Again, not saying that's going to happen. In fact, the chances are quite low, but you need to be ready for that just in case. So let's talk about those chances of landfall intensity. This is my graphic, so it has all of the latest information you need to know from me, but do not trust your life with this. So here we go. I'm saying there's a 10% chance that it makes a landfall as a tropical storm, but the best chances are 30% for a Cat 1, and the best one for us here is 40% for a Category 2. But look, I've got 15% chance for a Cat 3, and can't rule out that chance that it could become a Category 4 storm. So keep both of those in mind. Remember, that's 1 out of 5 for a Cat 3 or Cat 4, meaning a 20% chance that maybe one of those were to occur, especially the Cat 3 possibility. So keep those higher end chances in mind. Now, the projected surge, let's get a closer breakdown look at this for us. You can see 2 to 4 feet expected for you there. on portions of the southern coast there of the Panhandle, but the best chance is going to be right in that Big Bend area through Cedar Key, 7 to 11 feet of inundation. This is life-threatening, pushing onshore. But notice all the way down to the Keys, we could see 2 to 4 feet to at least 1 to 3 feet, for us there down at the Keys, 2 to 4 feet there in the Tampa, St. Pete, and Bradenton region. Rain totals of 3 to 6 inches will be the most prominent out of this. This storm will be picking up the pace due to a front that's going to be picking it up. So notice how a few inches are likely all the way up the Florida coast. So really what this is going to do is it's going to kind of broaden out. We're going to see heavy rain kind of combining with the front. But overall, the rain totals are not going to be extreme, but this will be enough to create some dangerous flooding, just not of the most intense caliber we've seen with previous hurricanes. Though that will still bring in probably a level 2 to level 3 out of 4 flooding threat, especially into places like Tallahassee, but again, all the way over to Jacksonville and along the I-95 corridor there, South Georgia, Savannah, all the way through Hilton Head to Charleston, South Carolina, all these areas needing to watch for the flooding chance to increase over the next 24 hours with more clarity. And when I say over the next 24 hours, I mean with the model runs getting together and agreeing with a higher flooding chance. So let's read these key messages for Tropical Storm Idalia. It is forecast to become a hurricane over the eastern Gulf of Mexico. We know that part. There are local officials that are giving advice, so make sure you're tuning into the local channels. The Weather Service, the National Hurricane Center, all of these websites are great materials for you to use. Scattered flash and urban flooding can be expected across portions of the west coast of Florida, the Florida Panhandle, and portions of the southeast United States by Tuesday and into all the way through Thursday. Flooding from heavy rainfall is likely over portions of the southeast United States by mid to late week. Heavy rainfall from the tropical storm is also expected again to continue over Yucatan Peninsula and western Cuba, and tropical storm conditions are expected over those areas to continue. So notice the headlines are moving away. Those are at the bottom. So these headlines are moving away from portions of the Yucatan Channel for us and now moving up into the eastern Gulf, which means that we need to be on high alert here. So let's talk about a couple of locations. We're going to do Tampa first, then Cedar Key with my tide scale. T is for type. We're going to talk about all the hurricane, the surge, the tornadoes, the rainfall. Those are all potentials for us here, and the intensity is going to be high. Isolated tornadoes, strong wind gusts upwards of 60 miles per hour, and flooding and surge are all likely. We could see life-threatening inundation up to up to 5-6 feet at the max for us here in Tampa, though up to around 4 feet is going to be the highest probability. The duration, the worst of it will likely come Tuesday night, and again, the explanation has been provided throughout the video. And then for Cedar Key, the type of system, again, we're talking hurricane, we're talking surge, we're talking tornadoes, and we're talking rainfall. The intensity of this, the worst surge, will be to 10 or more feet. This is life-threatening storm surge. I cannot stress that enough. If you live within a couple of miles of the coastline, there is going to be battering winds, battering water coming down from the sky and from the ocean. You need to be ready for that. Heavy rainfall, tornadoes will all be possible. Worst of it will come into early Wednesday, so keep that in mind. The faster this front that's moving in from the north and west at a slow clip, by the way, it's going to have to get dragged out by a new low-pressure system moving into the Great Lakes. That will bring some storms to the northeast. I digress from that, though. The faster this front is, will result in the landfall further south. So if this front is 6 hours ahead, we're talking a landfall closer to Tampa Bay as opposed up in the Big Bend, because this storm is going to be moving quickly. So that would mean the impacts would change quite significantly. The impacts would decrease in that case for Georgia and the Carolinas. By the way, let's talk about the impacts for places like Georgia and the Carolinas. The models show the storm skimming the Atlantic coast as it pushes northeastward. Again, the European and the GFS ensembles are now beginning to come into closer agreement on this. And as you can make out quite clearly, the black line on your screen would drag this pretty much right along the I-95 corridor and then finally take this offshore somewhere around the North Carolina, South Carolina border, which would basically mean these impacts, the gusty winds, the heavy rain, the storm would still have access to some of the Atlantic waters, which are very warm right along the coast, while skimming along land. So this might not even weaken below tropical storm status as it crosses land. And the rainfall could be just as intense inland. Remember, we're looking at the potential for, say, 3, 4, 5 inches of rain into the Savannah region, Hilton Head, Charleston, all the way on up to Myrtle Beach, all these areas that I've been, researching your rainfall totals. These are possible for you in those locations. And then wind gusts 50 to 70 miles per hour will be likely along the Georgia and Carolina coastlines. As you can see, that storm, the longer it spends just kind of over the Gulf and gathering its energy together, the more it will have to give out. And then right as it's kind of skimming along the Atlantic force there, right along the shore or just offshore, that provides the best chances for this system. to keep itself together. Sorry, a lot of talking to do about this storm for sure, and especially on the eastern side, that's where the best chance for some of these damaging storms and the heavier rain, the gusty winds will be. So let's go ahead and move on to our headlines and recap what we've been talking about in this video before we call it quits. Idalia is expected to strengthen quickly through Tuesday night. An increasingly strong tropical storm or hurricane will be moving north over the next 60 hours before making a landfall somewhere near Florida's Big Bend Tuesday night and into Wednesday morning. Category 3 to 4 status. Remember, that cannot be eliminated from the possibilities. Surge to 11 feet. Hurricane force gusts. Rain, tornadoes, they're all likely. A swath of extremely dangerous downpours is likely from the landfall site all the way inland and towards the coastal Carolinas. The eastern side of a storm like this is capable of producing life-threatening surge in coastal areas as well as tornadoes that could go to the Florida East Coast. Be ready for the worst without panicking. It is not too late to start getting ready. Get the sandbags ready. Stock up on your supplies. Do some research. Evacuate if you need to, according to Florida Disaster website. And remember to monitor your local news and weather authorities for the latest information. Thank you so much for watching, everybody. Please like and subscribe if this was useful for you so I can continue providing this life-saving information to those who need it.